Think you could survive as an alchemist in the Middle Ages? Let's see how you fare. Starting now. Welcome to tonight's Tea and Gravity. I'm Professor Teabottom. Imagine it. You awaken not in your bed, but on a prickly straw-filled mattress, in a room so cold your breath fogs before your face. The only warmth comes from Pig, curled up beside you, purring faintly and smelling of sage and last night's embers. You sit up, the straw crunching and poking you in ways that make you reconsider all previous complaints about modern bed sheets. Instinctively you reach to fasten your nightshirt, only to discover your favourite golden button is missing. Not loose, not cracked, vanished. Your first thoughts are as medieval as they come. Has Pig stolen it? Has it been transmuted in my sleep? Is this a bad omen or simply Monday? The senses assaulted. The smell hits you next, a heady, unmistakable blend of sulphur, old cabbage, and something less charitable that might once have been cheese. Your nose wrinkles, the source, your own laboratory, really a lean-to attached to the cottage, filled with the residue of last night's failed experiment. Before you can investigate, Pig leaps from the bed and lands with a practiced thud beside a battered chest. She immediately begins pawing at a suspicious pile of dust and dried herbs. The pile erupts, sending a cloud of powder into the air and coating her whiskers with alchemical detritus. The reality of medieval mornings. You rise. The wooden floor is icy. Your toes curl. You grope for a slipper, only to find it occupied by a small but belligerent beetle. Hygiene is aspirational. The wash basin holds a thin skin of ice, and your only towel is, in truth, more of a suggestion than an actual fabric. Breakfast is another adventure. You contemplate last night's blackened crust and a questionable hunk of cheese. Pig eyes you, clearly hoping for something better. As you break the egg, an ordeal in itself, a foul aroma fills the air. Pig recoils, sneezes and bolts for the window ledge. The neighbourhood awakes. There's no time for complaints. Out in the lane, a chorus of voices already heralds the dawn, the baker's boy calling out burnt rolls, a neighbour arguing with her goat about property boundaries, the town crier announcing at top volume that someone is wanted for suspicious bubbling. You try not to make eye contact. First laboratory calamities. You shuffle into the laboratory searching for both inspiration and your missing button. The air is dense with the ghosts of failed experiments. There are jars labelled in fading Latin, odd stains in corners, and a cauldron gently oozing something iridescent and faintly menacing. Insert image. The lab table. Close-up of bubbling vials, a thick book propped open with an iron spoon, a mortar and pestle with streaks of brilliant blue, and Pig in the background, peering at a brass scale as if to weigh her options. Your golden button, nowhere to be seen. Instead, you discover a makeshift philosopher's stone, actually a river pebble painted red, balanced atop a velvet cushion. Beside it, a diagram for transmuting base metals into gold, mostly ink blots and smudges, and a long winding list of theories to test when the landlady is out. The realities of survival. You, and the listener, for tonight you are they, set to work. Because in this world, the line between hunger and discovery is perilously thin. Every experiment is a wager against poverty, suspicion, and your own dubious luck. You grind dried nettles, mutter half-remembered Latin, and pour a measure of brackish water into a crucible. Pig investigates a rolling bead of mercury, pausing only when you snatch her away, certain you'd prefer a living familiar to a transmuted one. Outside, a knock. The neighbour, scowling, thrusts a wilted sprig of rosemary through the door. For luck, she mutters, and try not to explode before lunch. You bow with what dignity you can muster. Pig sniffs the rosemary, sneezes again, and looks genuinely affronted. The world is watching. Everything is perilous. Even the sunlight seems dangerous, filtering through warped glass and glinting off a shelf of dubious tonics. Your ears ring with the sounds of the town. A bell tolls, a baby wails, and somewhere, someone is hammering at something that's almost certainly a lawsuit in progress. You try, futilely, to take stock. But the button's absence nags at you. Every pocket checked, every cushion prodded, every suspicious pile of Pig's secret hoardings investigated. The button mystery deepens. You begin to wonder, was it stolen by rival alchemists? Did Pig eat it? Or, and this seems likeliest, was it never gold at all? Alchemy, after all, is as much about faith as chemistry. Pig, perhaps sensing your exasperation, leaps onto the table, sending a sheaf of notes fluttering to the floor. One lands at your feet, a sketch of a button, labelled "Test for Gold Content", pending results, probably brass. Today, as you pace the workshop in bare feet and uncertain dignity, you set your mind, and whatever's left of your optimism, on the grandest dream of all, the Philosopher's Stone, the lure of alchemy. There's a reason, you quickly learn, that the pursuit of alchemy gripped the desperate, the brilliant, and the slightly unhinged for centuries. Who wouldn't want to conjure gold from mere dust? To find a shortcut past poverty, disease, and the endless demands of the world? Even now, with your belly rumbling and your socks, well, sock, already soaked from a spill, you can't help but feel a flutter of excitement as you open the Book of Secrets, illuminating the painted river pebble that serves as your would-be philosopher's stone. Pig slinks across the page, tail flicking, eyes wide with the feline certainty that somewhere in all this mess is a treat with her name on it. You push her aside, gently, for superstition says cats are lucky, and trace a finger down the recipe. Take of lead a humble portion, and of hope a full measure, mix well and heat with the patience of Job. You glance at your motley collection of ingredients. Lead at least is plentiful, gleaned from the roofs and pipes of half the town. Patience less so. The ritual of failure. The experiment begins in earnest. You grind, you mutter, you accidentally sprinkle powdered nettle into your tea. There is something magical in the way hope endures, even as the air thickens with the scent of burning vinegar and the persistent reek of last week's onion tincture. No amount of chanting or Latin incantation can make the lead in your crucible shine. Instead, it hisses, spits, and reluctantly transforms into something that looks suspiciously like last night's porridge. Your hopes flag, but you are, by now, practiced in the gentle art of disappointment. Outside, the village is waking in earnest. You hear the rattle of the miller's cart, the lowing of oxen, and a child's gleeful shout, "Witch! The alchemist is making rainbows again." You duck your head, embarrassed but secretly pleased. You set aside your transmuted lump and consider the next approach. Perhaps it's the river water that's lacking, or maybe you should try honey. The book is filled with suggestions, some plausible, others clearly written after the author had indulged in a little too much distillation. A knock at the door interrupts your reverie, the neighbourly visit. It's your neighbour, Mistress Celandine, arms folded, mouth pursed. She glances at your smoky interior and the mess at your feet. "Trying for gold again, are you?" she says, half amused, half exasperated. "You'd do better to make soap." Before you can protest, Pig darts out, sniffs Celandine's boots, and tries to climb her skirt, no doubt searching for the missing button, or at least something shiny. "I saw you rummaging in the rubbish heap this morning," Celandine continues. "If you're missing something, like your wits or a shiny bit of brass, check under the baker's barrel. That's where Pig always drags her treasures." The button hunt. Armed with new suspicion and a handful of hope, you venture into the muddy yard. The air is alive with the smells of earth, smoke, and fermenting apples. Pig bounds ahead, tail high, leading you in the time-honoured tradition of cats everywhere, straight into the most awkward spot imaginable. You crouch by the baker's barrel, ignoring the sceptical stares of passing neighbours. Pig circles, sniffs, then vanishes into a gap beneath the woodpile. Alas, it's not the golden button, just a battered farthing, green with age and altogether disappointing. Pig is unrepentant, and you're left to explain yourself to the baker, who wonders aloud if you're hunting for secret ingredients. Back to the stone. Dejected, you return to your lair, ambition somewhat reduced. Perhaps the Philosopher's Stone is not for you. Perhaps, as Pig seems to suggest, the real treasure is a warm spot by the fire and a full belly. You try once more with the stone. Lead, salt, vinegar, the faintest scrap of parchment from an old prayer book. Surely, if nothing else, this will make a new sort of disaster. The moment of near triumph. The mixture bubbles. Something, surely miraculous, begins to glimmer at the bottom of the pot. Is it gold? Is it salvation? Is it Pig's missing collar tag, somehow cooked into your brew? You stare, heart pounding, as Pig leaps up beside you, sniffing the edge of the cauldron. The letdown is as swift as it is thorough. Pig, indifferent to your existential despair, bats at the tag, flicking droplets of miracle tonic across the table. The neighbourhood laughs. News travels fast in a medieval village. By midday, children have gathered outside the window, daring one another to peek inside the wizard's lair. Someone has started a rumour that you turned a button into a coin, and a coin into a frog, and now the frog is mayor. You sigh, shoulders heavy, as a pair of giggling girls toss you a present, a painted pebble meant to be witch's gold. Pig, ever the opportunist, snags it and disappears under the table. You slump onto a stool, elbow deep in failure. The air is sweet with defeat, laced with the faint hope that tomorrow's experiment might work. The button remains lost, the philosopher's stone as distant as ever. But there's a certain stubborn pleasure in the work. Each failure is a story, and each disaster a step closer to understanding, or at least to surviving another day. Pig hops onto your lap, purrs, and begins kneading your sleeve. Her golden eyes close as the last rays of sun slip across the room. As darkness creeps in, you tidy the lab and stack your notes. Tomorrow will bring more failure and perhaps a little progress. You wonder if anyone in history ever really found gold, or if the real magic was learning to enjoy the chase. The perils of medieval chemistry, explosions, poisons, and noxious fumes. When you set out on your grand medieval adventure, you might have imagined candlelight on gold, scrolls of forbidden knowledge, and the gentle clink of coins. What you probably didn't picture was the all-too-real possibility of ending up airborne, purple, or, at best, slightly crispy. Because, dear listener, as you're about to discover, the true business of medieval chemistry is less about gold and more about survival, dodging disaster, ducking explosions, and learning, the hard way, that not every potion improves with age. Tonight, with Pig as your reluctant assistant, we explore the wildest dangers of the alchemical life. The lab, house of hazards. Morning sunlight slants through your warped window, catching a swirl of dust motes and lending your cluttered lab a deceptive air of peace. Your own hands are a patchwork of scrapes, ink stains, and something that may or may not be arsenic. You squint at your latest recipe, a scrawl of hopeful ink on a soot-stained page. Today, aqua fortis. Warning, fumes unpleasant. Open window. You tug open the shutter. It groans in protest, revealing the world outside, a blur of church spires and roof tiles, already wreathed in the smoke of other people's mistakes. Ingredients for disaster. Aqua fortis, or strong water, is a substance that, you've been assured, can dissolve almost anything. Gold, silver, yesterday's stew, if you're desperate. The ingredients are all here. Saltpeter, green vitriol, and a recipe written in Latin and nervous afterthoughts. You grind, mix and pour, the mixture fizzing in your favourite, if somewhat pitted, alembic. Pig emerges, sniffs and sneezes violently. A cloud of acrid vapour swirls toward the ceiling. No medieval experiment is complete without a little spectacle. The solution boils, the fumes thicken, and the air grows so sharp you can taste metal on your tongue. You cough, back away, and bump your elbow against a precarious stack of scrolls. Pig senses the shift and darts for cover, this time to the safety of the window ledge, tail twitching like a nervous metronome. Suddenly the mixture hisses and a fountain of froth erupts from the vessel. The glass shudders, and with a sound like a tavern brawl in miniature, a jet of caustic steam blasts across the table. The recipe was correct. Fumes are unpleasant. You wonder idly if this is how the old rhyme began. It's golden, it's dangerous, the air grows thick. You grin to yourself, murmuring, "The way you move is alchemy, and I'm just a scientist in a dream." Pig is unmoved by the reference, but it buoys your spirits. The deadliest tools in the shop. If the chemicals don't get you, the tools might. You reach for a spoon, its bowl blackened, its handle bent from repeated close calls, and begin to stir the next concoction. A tincture that, in theory, cures boils. In practice, it mostly makes them smell like thyme. You drop the spoon into the cauldron. It lands with a metallic clank, and a purple bubble rises to the surface. Pig, watching intently, decides this is the precise moment to leap from the window and land squarely in your lap just as the bubble bursts. Mercury rising. Mercury is a magician's delight and a doctor's despair. You need only the tiniest drop, but medieval wisdom is vague on how tiny. You pour a splash, far too much, into a saucer. Pig, ever the scientist, dips her paw and flicks a globule under the table. The table is a battleground of stains and mystery powders, the shadows under it deep and full of possibilities. Mercury is beautiful, lethal but beautiful. You imagine for a moment that it might hold the answer to every alchemist riddle. Then you sneeze and it rolls away, out of reach. The Big Bang Theory. You turn at last to your masterpiece, an attempt at dragon's fire. The book says, heat with caution. Your enthusiasm says otherwise. You stoke the fire, add a pinch of saltpeter, and step back as the mixture boils with alarming speed. Pig meows, a warning you're too slow to heed. There is a sudden, ear-splitting crack, a flash of orange, a puff of black smoke. The entire cauldron leaps from the table, trailing sparks and the smell of burnt feathers. For a heartbeat, you and Pig are frozen, two survivors in the aftermath of disaster. When the noise dies, you survey the damage. Cauldron on the floor, scorch mark on the wall, and a new ventilation hole in the roof. The lesson: never trust a recipe that ends in an exclamation point. You cough, wheeze, and fan the smoke from the door. The neighbour's rooster, long suspicious of your activities, lets out a startled crow and flees the yard. Pig emerges, miraculously unscathed, now streaked with purple and green. She shakes, sending droplets flying. The missing button, by some miracle, is not among the casualties. Or perhaps it has transmuted into vapour. You're not ruling anything out. Outside the window, a rooster sprints past, feathers akimbo. The village reacts. Word spreads fast. Soon a crowd of villagers gathers outside, drawn by the smoke and the hope that you've finally blown yourself into legend. Children peer through the soot-streaked window, gasping at the spectacle. The baker's wife shakes her head. "I told you he'd do it again," she says, only half joking. The local constable, always ready with a lecture, pounds on the door. As the hubbub dies down, you mop your brow and contemplate your situation. Another day, another disaster. But you're alive. Pig is whole, and the village is only moderately more suspicious than yesterday. You hum a few bars of a modern tune. Alchemy, all the alchemists say, it's a force you can't fight, it just happens anyway. It's strangely comforting. Taylor Swift would have made an excellent medieval philosopher, if only for the poetry. The world is still, just for a moment, a flicker of hope. Even in failure, there's a beauty to the chaos. Tomorrow you'll try again. Maybe you'll find the philosopher's stone. Maybe you'll discover the golden button. Maybe you'll simply survive. Pig nuzzles your chin. You scratch her behind the ears. For tonight, that's enough. It's late afternoon in your little patchwork corner of the Middle Ages, and you've survived explosions, poisonous potions, and the suspicion of every living creature in your village. But if you're hoping for a respite, some chance to sit back, bask in the golden glow of discovery, or even just wash the smoke out of your hair, I regret to inform you, an alchemist's work is never truly done. No, the only thing more persistent than hope in an alchemist's heart is the steady drumbeat of necessity. Debt, hunger, and the ceaseless need to keep the locals on your side. These are your daily bread, and often they're all you get. A patchwork of obligations. The sun hangs low, painting the sky with streaks of saffron and bruised purple. Through this cloudy glass, you watch as villagers drift home from the fields, faces shadowed by worry, hands calloused and brown, eyes never quite meeting yours for fear that you might see their secrets or, worse, ask for a loan. Your stomach rumbles, reminding you that you're not immune to earthly needs. You rummage through your cupboard, finding only the heel of a week-old loaf and a shriveled onion. Pig sits beside you, tail twitching, clearly unimpressed by your foraging skills. In a world with no research grants or laboratory funding, you have only two choices: beg or barter. Today, you try both. You wrap yourself in your least tattered cloak, itself a patchwork of past barters, clutch a battered flask of elixir of vitality, which tastes faintly of disappointment and boiled nettle, and head for the marketplace. The crowd's reaction is as warm as the wind off the dunghill. Some ignore you, others mutter about strange folk and stranger brews. The local baker laughs outright. "Try your luck at the tavern, wizard. You'll need more than potion to earn your supper." Pig, ever loyal, weaves between your feet, occasionally meowing in a tone that might almost be encouragement, or more likely, a reminder to check the fishmonger's barrel for scraps. Everywhere you go, you're reminded of what you owe. The smith wants copper wire repaid. The apothecary wants his mortar back, with the pestle this time. The landlord wants the roof patched, after last week's miraculous ventilation incident. You smile, promise, cajole. Alchemy, you discover, is less about science and more about creative accounting. Back in the workshop, you make notes in the only ledger that matters: debt to Miller, 1 week's grain. Debt to Pig, several apologies for lack of fish. Debt to self, a decent night's sleep. In medieval science, patronage is everything. If you want to keep your roof and your head, you must flatter those with money. Nobles, merchants, even the odd bishop with a toothache and a taste for miracles. You mix up your best tonic for longevity, wrap it in a scrap of ribbon, and prepare for your least favourite experiment, socialising. Lord Barthelme, your would-be patron, lives at the top of the hill in a manor grand enough to have its own ghosts. His appetite for novelty is matched only by his suspicion. You offer your tonic with a bow, eyes fixed on the carpet. He sniffs it, grimaces, and demands a demonstration. You drink, forcing a smile. The tonic tastes of boiled lettuce and hope. Barthelme is unimpressed. "I'll let you know if I survive till morning," he says, waving you away. Pig, ever resourceful, sneaks into the manor kitchen and emerges later with a scrap of roast and, oddly, a golden ribbon tangled in her whiskers. For a moment, your heart leaps. Is it the missing button? No, just a glimmer, another trick of fate. The truth is, no matter how many cures or concoctions you offer, you'll always be a curiosity, never quite belonging. The villagers are wary, nobles are fickle, and even the cats play their own games. You're a fixture on the margins, a source of fascination, envy, and mild fear. Children dare each other to knock on your door. Gossips whisper that you've sold your soul for a handful of gold that never quite materializes. One elderly neighbour, half blind but twice as clever as she looks, offers you a jar of goose fat for the aches, and then warns you, sotto voce, that alchemy never brought happiness to anyone, dear. Twilight on a crooked lane, the alchemist's door covered in odd symbols and nail marks, children huddled in a giggling group, an old woman in a shawl placing a jar on the stoop. Pig, tail in the air, circles protectively. Alchemy, but make it swift. As you trudge home through the deepening gloom, a phrase hums in your head. Part song, part stubborn affirmation. It's golden, the way you move is alchemy, and darling, I'd give anything just for a glimpse of that light. Even Taylor Swift, you reflect, knows something of transmuting grit into gold. Perhaps, like her, you're searching for the spark that turns misery to melody, lead to legend. Pig rubs against your leg. You stoop, pick her up, and she purrs, a vibration as honest and grounding as any potion. Home at last, you brew a mug of bitter herbal tea, scratch Pig behind the ears, and watch the moon rise through clouded glass. The debts will wait. The roof still leaks. But tonight, there's warmth in the hearth, and a friend by your side. In a final, hopeful act, you check under your pillow for the missing button, just in case. Nothing. Pig circles, needs a patch of blanket, and settles in. You make a final note in your ledger. Today, survived. Tomorrow, try again. Alchemy's a slow business. The company you'd keep, rogues, mystics, and unscrupulous nobles. If you think that the worst part of being a medieval alchemist is the risk of a little accidental poisoning, or the smell of burnt onion lingering in your beard for a fortnight, you haven't yet met your colleagues. For in this smoky, superstitious world, the life of an alchemist is defined as much by the company you keep as the concoctions you brew. By now your days have a rhythm, 1 part survival, 2 parts improvisation, with a pinch of outright theatre for the benefit of both patrons and the village rumour mill. And as dusk settles over crooked rooftops and the crows argue in the bare-limbed trees, you can be certain of only one thing. Someone, somewhere, is about to knock at your door wanting a miracle, a secret, or at least a taste of the unknown. Enter the cunning woman. The first to appear is Dame Isabeau, the village's cunning woman. Her arms full of wild herbs, her grey hair tangled with twigs and secrets. She pushes into your workshop with the confidence of a queen in exile. Isabeau never asks for permission. She simply rearranges your ingredients, sniffs at your cauldron, and offers sharp opinions on your most recent batch of headache balm. More marjoram next time, and less vinegar, unless you want the whole parish to fall asleep for a week. She eyes your shelf of failed attempts, picks up a flask and swirls it thoughtfully. You know, there's talk in the market that you turned a farmer's pig into a bag of coins. You wince. Pig, ears flat, vanishes under the table. As Isabeau leaves, the air still fragrant with sage, there comes a brisk tap, then a sheepish cough. his brother Armand, the local monk, bearing a tray of honey cakes and a mind full of theological worries. He peers at your apparatus as if expecting the devil to spring forth at any moment. He admits, in a voice scarcely above a whisper, that he'd like a potion for courage. Strictly for spiritual matters, you understand. You oblige with a mild tincture of valerian, and he leaves you with a blessing that sounds suspiciously like an exorcism. Later, as moonlight slants through the shutters, a shadowy figure slips in. Gregory the Charmer, half peddler, half rogue, offers you a rare and mysterious stone for a modest sum. The stone turns out to be river quartz, artfully wrapped in string. Gregory leans close, breath sweet with ale, and whispers, "You've a reputation, friend. There's talk you know things even the bishop's afraid to ask. Say, you're not missing a golden button, are you? Only, I heard one changed hands at the crossroads market last night." Your hopes rise, then crash. He produces a bent coin, not your button, with an apologetic grin. The noble's dangerous favour. But the most perilous visitor of all is Lord Gaston, your would-be patron and chief source of anxiety. His boots thump on your floorboards like thunder, his entourage cluttering the yard with horses and nervous whispers. Gaston's mood, like the weather, is volatile, generous one day, vengeful the next. Tonight he arrives with a velvet pouch and a toothache, demanding a remedy worthy of royal blood. You mix clove and honey, add a dash of laudanum, and pray for a quick miracle. Gaston swigs the potion, grimaces, then tosses the empty cup aside. "I trust you'll remember this favour, Alchemist. A man in your position can't afford too many enemies." He pauses, fingers the hilt of his dagger. "Or too many secrets. Have you seen my wife's brooch? Solid gold, went missing yesterday. I'd hate to think there's a thief among us." You gulp and shake your head. Pig, sensing the tension, sidles up and winds herself around Gaston's boots, earning a grudging smile. Magic, mischief, and the rumour mill. With each visitor, your reputation grows ever more tangled. Equal parts healer, heretic, and hopeful con artist. Some people come seeking love potions, others want a deadly poison. You decline the darker requests, but word travels faster than you can quash it. One morning you find a painted sign nailed to your door, "Wizard for hire." Beneath it someone has scrawled, "Practicer of the unholy art," and below that, in a surprisingly elegant hand, "Owes me a shilling." You sigh and pull the sign down, but the label sticks. Pig sniffs it, sneezes, and then bats at a beetle skittering across the threshold. Brief respite among rogues. Amid all this, there are rare moments of camaraderie, late-night cups of weak ale, whispered jokes, and the odd song traded with Isabeau by firelight. On the best nights, you feel less a fraud and more a survivor, one among many outcasts in a world that rarely rewards difference. Between visits, Pig is always on the move, diving into baskets, pouring at piles of rags, occasionally emerging with a glimmer of something golden. Your heart jumps. Is this finally the button? Alas, it's only the tin lid from a jar of balm. The real treasure as ever eludes you. But hope persists, even when common sense protests. Perhaps tomorrow, among the tricksters and dreamers, the truth will come to light. A closing note. So ends another day in the company of rogues, mystics, and nobles with more ambition than scruple. You are no richer, no wiser, and certainly no closer to gold, but you have survived the endless swirl of schemes and suspicions. You collapse into your creaking bed, Pig curled at your feet, dreams full of mysteries unsolved and fortunes yet to be won. For in the world of the alchemist, it's the chase, not the catch, that keeps hope alive. If you thought the greatest hazards of medieval alchemy were chemical in nature, let me assure you, no sulphurous concoction or stray goblet of mercury could ever match the potent dangers of a suspicious neighbour. If lead poisoning and small explosions threaten your body, the gossipy mill of the village works tirelessly at eroding your reputation, your livelihood, and on a particularly unlucky day, your freedom. By now you're settling, if such a word can be used for a life lived on the very edge of tolerance, into the daily rhythms of the outcast. There's never a dull moment, not with Pig pouncing on the shadows, rumours as thick as fog, and the ever-present risk of being blamed for the next bad harvest or bout of boils. Welcome to the ultimate test of social survival. The day begins with suspicion. The morning sun creeps over thatched rooftops, gilding the dew-drenched world in soft gold. You might fancy this is a peaceful sight, if not for the stench wafting from your lab window, a heady brew of last night's failed experiment and this morning's over-toasted nettle tea. A knock comes at your door, loud, persistent, the rhythm of someone expecting trouble. You open it to find Mistress Endel, the baker's wife, flanked by her 2 eldest daughters and carrying a basket of burnt loaves. "Mornin'," she says, voice wary. "Did you hear thunder in the night? Or was that another of your, experiments?" Pig, sensing tension, makes a show of sniffing the bread, then pointedly retreats beneath your workbench. You offer apologies, sincere, if not specific, and return the basket with an extra sprig of thyme for luck. As the door closes, you hear the girls giggle, already plotting the day's tales, the village gossip mill. The day unfolds, as so many do, in the murmur of rumour and the sideways glance of suspicion. The butcher's boy comes to fetch a salve for his father's back, but can't resist a quick tour of your shelves, eyes wide, lips pursed, memorising details for later retelling. You overhear snippets as you walk the muddy lane. And then he made the stew boil backwards. Swear by St. Winifred I saw a light in the window at midnight. Which light? Plain as the moon. And what's more, my ma says he turned old Jonas's dog into a frog. You pass Dame Isabeau, who winks and whispers, "You know you're famous when they blame you for the weather." No amount of tidying can fully banish the evidence of your trade. Smoke clings to your tunic, your hands bear the marks of ink and soot, and your shoes are permanently scented with the ghosts of failed potions. One afternoon, you step into the tavern, hoping for a crust of bread and a little warmth. Conversation dims. The innkeeper's wife eyes you over a ladle, nostrils flaring. "Careful, that one," she warns a maid. "He'll turn your ale to vinegar if you're not quick." Pig, unbothered, curls at your feet, napping through the tension. That evening, the miller's youngest wakes with a rash. The very next morning, a crowd gathers outside your door, anxious, angry, determined to find a cause for every misfortune. The local priest stands at their head, thumping a staff. We must root out the unnatural, the dangerous, the malodorous. Pig perches on the windowsill, hackles raised, eyes unblinking. You protest your innocence, show your hands, your empty vials, your ledger of debts and not curses. The crowd listens, but the hunger for a scapegoat lingers. A single neighbour, old Elsa with her walking stick, says, "If he were a real wizard, he'd have gold, and not just the button he's always on about." Pig, as if on cue, disappears beneath the floorboards. The next days are spent on eggshells. You avoid the marketplace, mend the holes in your roof, and triple-check your recipes for anything that might explode, stain, or, most of all, attract attention. Pig spends her hours as a spy, watching from the eaves, tail flicking, occasionally vanishing with something small and shiny in her mouth. You start to suspect that, should you ever face real trouble, it will be Pig who devises your escape plan. One morning, you find a painted charm hanging from your door, a ward against evil influences. Is it a threat, a warning, or just village children playing at magic? You pocket it, uncertain whether to be flattered or afraid. Not all neighbours are hostile. That evening Dame Isabeau visits again, bearing a basket of quince and a bottle of her own miracle cordial. "People gossip because they're bored," she says, settling herself by your fire. "Better to be interesting and alive than dull and forgotten." You share a cup, swap stories, and for a little while the world feels warmer. Pig, emboldened by the scent of quince, finally emerges with a shiny object in her mouth. Your hopes soar. Could it be the button at last? But no, just a copper ring rescued from a lost shoe. As the moon rises, the village quiets, but the sense of unease lingers. You patch a leak in the window, tidy your shelves, and watch Pig curl in her favourite basket. Still the only soul you trust without reservation. A faint glimmer from under the dresser catches your eye. For a breathless moment you think it's the missing button. But when you investigate, it's only a sliver of broken mirror, Yet another false hope. You laugh softly and scratch Pig's chin. Outside, an owl calls. Somewhere a neighbour mutters your name, folding another rumour into the fabric of the night. Despite the whispers and suspicion you endure, for every neighbour who shuns you, another comes secretly for a cure, a charm, or even just a word of advice. Pig, unfazed by human folly, reminds you with every rumbling purr that the best kind of company is neither noble nor neighbour, but the sort that stays, regardless of rumour or ruin. You add a final line to your ledger for the day. Enemies gained, perhaps. Friends kept, certainly won. If you thought the greatest risk of medieval alchemy was a singed eyebrow or a reputation in tatters, you've yet to face the truly desperate patient. For as the self-appointed healer of the margins, you must now don your least stained robe and bravest face, because in a world with little medicine and less mercy, you are sometimes all that stands between hope and the great beyond. Of course, it doesn't help that your shelf of remedies is half empty. Your patience is running on fumes, and Pig keeps dragging stray leeches under the bed for her private amusement. Your clinic is nothing more than the same battered workshop, hurriedly cleared of suspicious powders and with a rickety stool set by the fire for the ailing. Yet, from the moment you unlock your door, a line has formed. Faces pale, eyes hopeful, and at least one neighbour who seems entirely healthy but loath to miss out on a free tonic. First is Mistress Endel, baker's wife, whose son's rash has worsened. Behind her, old Tom with a bad knee, the widow with a cough, the weaver's apprentice with a heartbreak that no medicine will cure. Pig observes from a high shelf, flicking her tail, surveying the crowd as if preparing a triage list based on snack potential. Mistress Endel presents her son, a red-faced boy whose arms are blotched with hives. "It's the rye," she says. "Or maybe the moon. Can you help?" You consult your medical book, half recipes, half old wives' tales. The cure for hives: rub with raw onion, steep in vinegar, apply a poultice of mashed leeks and, if you can find it, unicorn hair. No unicorns to hand, so you improvise. Leek, onion, a dash of honey, and a ribbon from Pig's collar snipped in secret. Pig protests the theft with a mournful meow. You murmur a reassurance. "We're all sacrificing for science, my dear." The boy is slathered in the mixture. He sneezes. His rash glows an angrier shade of pink, but his mother beams. "It's working," she cries, her faith in alchemy momentarily restored. Next is old Tom, who insists he needs something for the knees. Strong as a bull, swift as a hare. You reach for your least suspicious bottle, a mix of nettle, honey and anise. It tastes vile, but Tom drains it in one go. "Feeling anything?" you ask. "Aye," he says. "Regret." Still, he leaves grinning. Pig follows him to the door just in case he drops a crust of bread. The widow next, frail and shivering. She describes her symptoms with theatrical flair, prompting Pig to yawn mid-performance. You rummage for something soothing and settle on a universal cure. Mead warmed with ginger, a sprig of rosemary and a pinch of dried frog's leg, or failing that, a dried bean. She sips, winces, and declares it nearly as good as the vicar's gin. You encourage her to rest and drink plenty of water, advice that sounds modern, but is mostly an attempt to keep her away from further home remedies. Later, you learn she's sharing the recipe as the Alchemist's magical soup. Its fame grows, even as your skepticism does. The weaver's apprentice is last, confessing he's lovesick for the miller's daughter. "She's as fair as dawn, and I'm but a thread in the wind," he sighs. "Your love potion is nothing but a blend of rosewater and honey. Harmless, but the placebo effect is sometimes the strongest medicine. You offer it with strict instructions. Say something kind, listen more than you speak, and don't spill this on your tunic." He leaves beaming, clutching the bottle like a talisman. Later, the apprentice returns, cheeks red. "It worked," he crows, though you suspect the effect had more to do with the advice than the alchemy. The universal cure gone awry. After a morning of such success, your confidence swells. Why not attempt a true, universal cure? You consult your oldest scroll. The recipe calls for mercury, egg yolk, vinegar, and the laughter of a new mother. The first 3 you can muster, the last is in short supply. You mix, you stir, you whisper the necessary words. Pig watches with wary fascination, edging closer. As you pour the mixture into a glass, the potion bubbles, turns blue, then suddenly erupts in a spray of fizzing foam. The liquid hits the ceiling, the walls, your face. Pig flees, trailing a splatter of blue down the hall. The crowd outside gasps, delighted. You wipe your eyes, taste vinegar, and declare with as much dignity as you can muster, it's not quite ready for sale. Word of your miracle cures volatility, spreads faster than any fever. The butcher's boy claims his cough disappeared after a whiff of your blue potion, though his mother insists it was fright that cured him. Your name is again the talk of the town. Some praise your courage, others snicker at your failures, and a few darkly whisper that you're dabbling in forbidden arts. Still, more come each day, hopeful, desperate, or just eager for a story to tell. You add a new line to your growing list of debts and promises. Cure for all ills, needs more testing, and less vinegar. Not all will trust your miracles, least of all Pig. That evening, as you tidy up and sweep the last of the blue foam out the door, you offer her a taste of your latest restorative. She sniffs, wrinkles her nose and turns away, settling on the windowsill to wash her whiskers. Perhaps you think wisdom is knowing when not to taste the cure. A glimmer catches your eye. Could it be the button, reflecting in the twilight? You crawl under the table, hopeful, only to discover a dried bean and a dust bunny the size of a mouse. Night falls, bringing quiet to your home and aches to your bones. You stoke the fire, pour yourself the dregs of your cure, and watch Pig chase shadows in the flickering light. Outside, the village is calm, as if all ills have been soothed, for now. You hum a line to yourself, the kind that lingers. It's golden. The way you move is alchemy. Perhaps the real magic isn't in the cure, but in the faith that brings people to your door, year after year. You stretch, yawn, and prepare for another night in the care of dreams and the hope of something golden, be it a cure, a button, or a chance to try again. Failure in the end is the alchemist's constant companion. It's the patient ghost that lingers after the fumes have cleared and the village has returned to its ordinary suspicions. Success is rare, fleeting, a visitor who leaves before the tea is even warm, but failure sits with you by the fire, shares the last crust of bread, and whispers stories about what might yet be. This evening, as dusk folds itself around your little cottage, you find that you are improbably at peace. The cauldron is empty, the ledger overflows with debts, your hands ache from mixing, mending, and hoping, and yet there is a peculiar pleasure in the stillness that settles after chaos, an evening of defeat and small joys. Pig, after a day of dodging potions and scolding, finally claims her throne atop the battered armchair. You brew a pot of nettle tea, earthy, slightly bitter, but comforting, a taste acquired only after a week of abject desperation. You sip in silence, eyes half closed, and let the evening wrap you in its gentle, smoky arms. The window is streaked with rain. The garden, barely more than a patch of mud, sparkles in the fading light. You are poor, exhausted, and still have not found your golden button. But for now, you are content. All around you, the relics of failure glow with quiet dignity. On the shelf, a bottle labelled Universal Cure, almost. On the mantel, a lump of lead that refuses to be gold, no matter how much poetry or hope you heap upon it. In a jar by the door, a collection of miracle herbs, each with a story of disappointment and an unexpected lesson. Pig's collection is more practical. Bits of string, a dried beetle, a tattered ribbon, and perhaps a cache of unidentifiable treasures stashed under the rug. She glances at you, eyes bright, as if to say, "See? Even failure has its rewards if you're clever enough." The consolation of friendship. You remember, not for the first time, that it's not gold that keeps you going, but the odd ramshackle friendships you've cobbled together from shared misfortunes and midnight confessions. Dame Isabeau brings a loaf of barley bread, still warm, wrapped in a square of linen. Brother Armand drops by with a jar of honey and a smile, his courage bolstered by your last tincture. Even Lord Gaston, dangerous and unpredictable, once sent a bottle of fine wine. Repayment for a potion that dulled his toothache for an entire day. The world may whisper about your failures, but these small kindnesses build a fortress against despair. There is a slow, stubborn comfort in daily ritual, even when the rituals are little more than stubborn acts of faith. You sweep the floor, organise your notes, knowing full well they'll be in disarray by morning, and check your experiments for any sign of miraculous change. Of course, there is none. The lead is still lead. The universal cure has gone slightly mouldy. The ledger is still very much in the red. But as Pig curls into a tighter ball, and the rain drums steadily above, you feel a quiet defiance. There is beauty and persistence, in the endless willingness to try again, in believing each new dawn that this time something wonderful may happen. As you tidy the study, your hand brushes something cool and round beneath a stack of failed diagrams. Your heart skips. Could it be? You snatch it up, hope rising, only to discover it's an old farthing, polished smooth by years of worry. Still, the moment is sweet. Pig purrs as you hold the coin aloft, sharing your triumph, however fleeting. You tuck the farthing into your pocket, a new talisman against tomorrow's disappointments. As the evening wanes, you sit in companionable silence with Pig, your tea gone cold, your dreams undiminished. You listen to the rain, to the faint crackle of the fire, to the contented sigh of a house that, though battered, still stands. You think of the old proverb, failure is the mother of invention. You think of every mishap, every disaster, every potion that fizzed, every button that slipped through your fingers. You think perhaps that tomorrow you will try again. And as Pig finally climbs into your lap, kneading your robe with gentle claws, you feel the weight of failure slip away, leaving only hope and the warmth of shared dreams. The night presses in close and gentle, like an old woolen blanket, frayed but warm. The embers in the hearth pulse softly. You and Pig, one human, one orange and white tangle of whiskers and dreams, have survived another day as an alchemist on the village fringe. No gold, no immortality, not even a button found, but a measure of peace is yours all the same. If failure is the mother of invention, then consolation is its kindly, long-suffering aunt, always on hand to mop your brow and offer a cup of tea when another batch of universal cure explodes in your face. It's the small, stubborn comfort that settles over you in the aftermath, a sense that even when hope crumbles, the search itself has meaning. A house full of echoes. In the hush after twilight, your cottage seems less like a workshop and more like a living scrapbook. Every battered shelf and scuffed table tells a story of wild ambition, comic miscalculation, and the occasional minor miracle. There are relics of failed experiments, scorched beakers, lumps of lead, a mouldy loaf, a bottle of blue potion that once promised to cure the common cold but mostly stained the floor. Pig stretches in the armchair, nose twitching at the ghosts of rosemary and burnt onion that linger in the air. She claims her spot by right. After all, she's suffered as much as you in this life of chaos, and always lands on her feet and often on your notes. The gifts of gentle routine. You know, as you move through the room, that some treasures are not gold or silver but the comfort of habit. The mug that always tastes a little of nettle tea, the robe you've patched 100 times, the chair that creaks just so. Pig follows your steps, her tail brushing your ankle, waiting for you to open the window and let the night air in. The garden outside is awash in shadow, but you catch a glimpse of moonlight glinting on the rain barrel, a little ordinary magic. It's at these quiet hours that you remember your friends. Tonight Dame Isabeau appears at the door, a bundle of lavender tucked under one arm and a crooked smile on her face. She settles by the fire, Pig instantly in her lap. You swap stories, herbs that worked, charms that didn't, news from the market and the ongoing saga of your missing button. Isabeau suggests, not for the first time, that perhaps the button has decided it prefers a more exciting life, maybe as a brooch for the baker's cat. You laugh, and Pig purrs so loudly the hearthstones seem to vibrate. After Isabeau leaves, you're struck by the gentle pleasures of uncertainty. In a world that demands answers, sometimes the happiest moments are those spent wondering, about the future, about the nature of a lead, about the secret life of buttons. You scratch Pig's head and muse aloud. Perhaps, my dear, the real philosopher's stone is simply patience. Pig responds by licking your hand, then promptly attacking a ball of yarn with ferocious intent. You prepare for bed, folding away today's notes, some stained with blue potion, others with laughter. Your mattress, still as lumpy as ever, is covered in a patchwork of mended sheets and last year's dreams. Before you sleep you kneel to peer beneath the bed, hope springing eternal. No button tonight. Instead, Pig's secret hoard, 2 pebbles, a wilted violet, and, astonishingly, your missing spoon. You accept the exchange. Who needs a button when you have a cat with a collection and a house full of stories? The heartbeat of the house. The storm outside thickens, rain drumming on the roof. The candle gutters low as you slip under your blanket. Pig a warm, heavy weight at your feet. You listen. The wind rattling the shutters, the tick of the clock, the slow breath of a house that's more than just shelter. It's a home, a place where failures gather like old friends, and hope is always simmering somewhere just out of sight. There will be more disappointments, more failed cures, more lost buttons, more laughter in the face of adversity. But for tonight, consolation is enough. The company of Pig, the memory of Isabeau's visit, and the certainty that, for all the failures, you've created a life that's richer than gold. You drift towards sleep, letting your mind wander to tomorrow's experiments. Perhaps the lead will turn this time. Perhaps the villagers will smile. Perhaps Pig will return your button. Perhaps. The rain lifts at last, leaving the world scrubbed and shining. Sunlight glints off the puddles in your tiny yard, and for the first time in days you hear bird song, tentative but confident enough to chase the gloom from every dusty corner of your cottage. You wake, for once, to a morning that feels not like survival but the start of something quietly miraculous. Pig is curled on your pillow, snoring softly, one white paw thrown over her eyes. Her collection of treasures is spread out beside her, a pebble, a faded violet, your long-lost spoon, and, in pride of place, the golden button at last, the rediscovery of wonder. There are moments, even for a medieval alchemist, when the world's endless striving falls away, and you see, if only for a heartbeat, the gift that has been with you all along. This morning, as you cradle the recovered button in your palm, the sun streaming through the window, you realize it was never about gold, or universal cures, or escaping the suspicion of neighbours. It was about the small, stubborn acts of hope that make life bearable. You hold the button up, watching sunlight spark from its surface, and feel a laugh bubble up, light, bright, and as clean as the morning itself. Pig, woken by your delight, stretches, yawns, and blinks at you. Her golden eyes are full of secrets she has no intention of sharing. You dress slowly, patching your robe where Pig's claws have worried the hem. Breakfast is plain, half a loaf, a sliver of cheese, the last of the honey. You savour every bite, watching Pig pounce on a dust mote and send your spoon clattering to the floor. Gratitude comes easily today, washing over you like a warm tide. The failed potions, the laughter, the comfort of shared bread with Dame Isabeau, even Brother Armand's cautious blessing. All these have built something more lasting than gold. You tidy the kitchen, humming under your breath, thinking of the friends who have stood by you, the stories you'll tell, and the patient, ridiculous hope that each day brings. As you sweep the floor, Dame Isabeau arrives, her arms full of lavender and news. She laughs to see the button back in your hand and insists on pinning it to your robe herself, for luck and to remind you what matters. Together you walk through the village, the sun glinting from your button, Pig a dignified shadow at your heels. The neighbours wave, some more warmly than others. Children dare one another to brush against your cloak as if a little magic might rub off. At the market, the miller's wife asks after your health. The baker slips you a sweet roll, and Brother Armand nods solemnly, his way of acknowledging that, in your own odd way, you belong. In the afternoon, you settle with Isabeau on the green outside the church, a patch of sunlight warming your backs. She asks about your latest experiments. You recount tales of fizzing cures and exploding cauldrons, of dreams that sputter but never quite go out. She leans close, voice gentle. We're all alchemists in our way, turning hope into action, making stories from ashes, sharing the best bits with friends. Pig sprawls on the grass, the button now dangling from her collar. Her prize, her secret, her legacy. You think, maybe that's the true inheritance of alchemy. Not gold, not immortality, but the courage to wonder, to risk, and to try again. Back home as evening falls, you write a letter, a record not of triumph, but of the daily magic you found. The page fills with small victories and honest failures, with gratitude for Pig, Isabeau, and every villager who ever trusted you with a prayer, a secret, or a bruise. You tuck the letter in your ledger, a seed for the next generation, or maybe just for tomorrow's self, who will need a reminder that wonder is always worth the work. Pig hops into your lap as you finish, kneading your robe, purring, the button flashing in the lamplight. As darkness folds over the village, you light the fire and set a fresh loaf by the coals. Pig curls at your feet, the button at her throat, her purr a low, contented thunder. The house hums with peace and possibility. You sit back, legs stretched to the hearth, and think of all you have gained, not in riches, but in resilience, laughter, and the daily joy of sharing a little magic with the world. Tomorrow will bring new trials, more failures, and inevitably more hope. But tonight, as Pig dozes and the button gleams softly in the firelight, you know you are, in every sense that matters, wealthy beyond measure. And as always, mind the damp, bring a biscuit, and never ever try to outstare a puffin. And so, dear listener, as the last of the teacups cools and Pig begins to snore most contentedly on the windowsill, we come to the end of tonight's tale. If you've enjoyed this little ramble through the improbable and the quietly profound, do be a dear and like the episode and subscribe to the channel. It helps keep the tea flowing, the lights low, and the cats, both remembered and yet to be, well fed and purring. And don't forget, you're warmly invited to join our free Substack. It's where you'll hear about each new episode as it arrives, and where our growing circle of sleepy science enthusiasts gathers to swap thoughts, dream up topics, and gently bicker about whether Pluto should bring a casserole to the next planetary reunion. Now, one last thing. Tonight's story has been for entertainment purposes only. It is not, strictly speaking, fact. Nor is it entirely fiction. Rather, it exists in that peculiar quantum superposition of the two until observed, preferably over a cup of something warm. Sleep well, and until next time, may your teacup never be empty.